Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for your interest for becoming a volunteer with the Greater Brookland Intergenerational Village. My name is Nadia Mercer, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Brookland Village. And I'm going to kick us off with an overview of the training. But first, Kinyofu, please introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Kinyofu. I am the community organizer, and I'll be contributing in this training. So you'll be hearing me chime in from time to time.
Great. Okay. Next slide.
Yes.
Huh?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, here's what we'll be covering today during the training, a village overview. So we'll talk about the origins of the village and the background of the village and when we started. We'll talk about goals for the training. We'll provide an overview of the volunteer code of conduct. We'll talk about the volunteer opportunities and the service request process. We'll discuss how to identify and navigate difficult scenarios you may encounter with members. And we'll talk about how to build healthy relationships with our members. And finally, we'll close with how to support members with physical challenges. So again, like our whole purpose as the Greater Brookland Village is to connect neighbors in support of one another. And so we hope that this training will help you and allow you to do that with our support, coordinating your connection with the neighbors. Okay, so what is a village? If you haven't heard, there are over 300 villages in the nation. The first village opened in 2002 in Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Every village is unique in the fact that is the same in the fact that it serves a specific geographic area. So they're all really small neighborhood-based organizations. And some villages charge a membership fee, others don't, but most do. And many offer subsidized or pay what you can membership fees. And some villages have staff and others are all volunteer led. As for us, you'll see we have 2 staff. And then most villages offer social wellness and educational programming, volunteer services, and refer members to vetted vendors. Okay, next slide. Okay, in DC, there are 13 active villages. We have recently formed a collaborative. So we meet on a monthly basis, which we have been doing in the past, but now we're an official DC Villages collaborative of 13 villages, which is very exciting. There are 70 villages in the DMV, and many of them are part of the Washington Area Village Exchange, which is an organization that supports villages getting established. And then there's also support from the Village to Village Network, which is a nationwide organization. And what's unique about the Greater Brookland Village? Next slide. Okay, so the Greater Brookland Village, that's us. We are a local grassroots nonprofit. We're fairly new. We were founded in January 2020 by neighbors who are still involved with the village. The founder, Emma Brownstein, is our board president. And we're the newest of the 13 DC villages and the only village in Ward 5. So the neighborhoods we serve are Brookland, Brentwood, Langdon, Woodridge, and University Heights. We offer 2 levels of membership. There's the supporting membership and the full membership. Our supporting membership is typically folks who want to get to know their neighbors and contribute to the village, but don't need any services, don't want to request volunteer services. So if you live in the neighborhood, for a long time, but a lot of people have moved out, or you want to get to know your newer neighbors, you might consider joining the village and participating in our social activities. Supporting membership is also something that our volunteers typically choose. Well, not exclusively. Sometimes volunteers choose to become full members as well. And then full membership is also for neighbors who want to get to know each other and socialize, but the only difference is that full members can request volunteer support. And then our membership dues are sliding scale. And then we have the intergenerational component, which makes us pretty unique from other villages. So you don't have to be a senior or an older adult to participate. We encourage like ages to socialize together and support one another with the understanding and belief that we learn a lot from being around others that aren't just our peers. And like other villages, we offer social wellness and educational programs and coordinate volunteers, and we have a neighbors helping neighbors approach. Next slide. So this is me, Nadia Mercer, Executive Director, and Kinyofu Mlimlengu. And Kinyofu is our community organizer. And here are our current board members. They're all neighbors as well. Okay, so the goal of this training. At the end of the training, you'll be able to understand our expectations for you as a volunteer, identify red flags you might see when working with members, understand how to respond in an emergency, set appropriate boundaries with members, be able to use active listening skills, and understand how to support members experiencing physical challenges. I think I'm taking your portion, Kinyofu.
Yes. Okay, no worries. So thank you for that, Nadia. And so before we begin, let's learn a little bit about each other. So maybe we can drop this information in the chat. And I'm going to ask you to, and if you're listening to the recording, you can just know that these are some of the questions that we ask when we meet each other. This is always great conversation starters. So share your name, share your cross streets, and share your neighborhood and how long you've been there. I'll begin. My name is Kinyofu Mlimlengu. My cross streets are 15th and Hamlin, or Hamlin and 15th. And my neighborhood is Brookland, and I've been here for 7.5 years.
Great. I'm Nadia Mercer, and I'm on 10th and Lawrence Street, on Lawrence between 9th and 10th. And I've been in Brookland since 2009.
And I'm Claire Ulrich, and I'm on 12th and Newton in Brookland, and I've been here for 4 years.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Claire, and anyone out there in the recording world, what do you hope to get out of volunteering? Think about it for a minute, and know that some people will say that they want to meet their neighbors and form new relationships. Others want to put their skills to good use. Maybe you're an expert gardener and have some great tech skills. Some want to stay physically, socially, and mentally active. And the fact is that giving back is not only good for our health, but also increases our sense of happiness.
Sure, yeah, I definitely think more in the first bullet, meeting and connecting with my neighbors. And yeah, I don't live close to my parents, so thinking also of being able to support sort of an older generation, as I'm not as close to my parents right now.
Got it. Thank you. And that was great that you have an answer. Some people don't even know. They just move to do something. It's fine. Okay. Nadia, you want to cover the volunteer code of conduct?
Oh, sure. Yep. Okay, so the volunteer code of conduct is intended to make sure both our volunteers and our members feel good about their involvement with the Greater Brookland Village. The complete code of conduct will be available in your volunteer manual that we'll share with you via email. But as a volunteer, I will agree to the following. I will treat members, staff, and fellow volunteers with courtesy, respect, and compassion while maintaining confidentiality regarding village members. The second one is I will observe, protect, and maintain confidentiality regarding village members. This is a big one. We want to make sure that members, when they reach out for help, when they need it, they're not worrying about having their personal issues discussed without their consent. So we always keep identities of our members private. In practice, what does this look like? This means that when you talk about the wonderful volunteering you do, just make sure you don't use any identifiers. You can definitely say, I helped someone with a gardening project today and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed talking with them. That's fine, of course. So we want you to be proud of what you're doing, but don't say things like I helped a woman who lives on 15th and Lawrence with her gardening project and found out that she's being treated for cancer at Washington Hospital Center, and I hope she'll be okay. Like, well, I'm sure you hope she's going to be okay. It's probably best to not give so many identifiers. Not only could people figure out who you're talking about, but you're also breaking confidentiality by sharing members' personal health information. So the general rule is to keep it vague and nondescript as possible. Okay, the third agreement is that I will be careful to only commit to those activities for which I am qualified and available. The fourth, I will be prompt and reliable when reporting for a volunteer assignment. Of course, we understand that on occasion things come up that may make you late for your agreed upon time. You might misplace your keys when you're leaving your house, or your dog may refuse to go to the bathroom. In these situations, please communicate with the member that you are running late with a simple phone call. If you need to cancel altogether, tell the member as soon as you can and call us at the village as soon as possible to keep us informed of any schedule changes so we can support as needed. Or if you can't do it, we could ask another volunteer, and that's fine. I understand that the fifth agreement, I understand that all Brookland Village volunteer assignments will be assigned from the village staff, and I will not accept any personal requests from village members. So this might seem extreme, but this is just one way that we encourage our members and our volunteers to maintain healthy boundaries. Of course, if you develop a friendship with a member, that's great. It can take a life of its own. We don't want to stand in the way of that. But this is if you go for a volunteer agreement and or a volunteer service because you're there to change somebody's light bulb, and then they also ask if you could stay and mow their lawn, we'd like you to say, I've come to help you change your light bulb. Just call the village and they will make sure to put in your request. And if I can do it, I will. But if I can't, I'm sure they'll help you find another volunteer. So maintaining boundaries is a big part of being a volunteer. Okay, finally, we ask that all volunteers uphold certain values.
I can talk about cultural humility. So the first value, as I mentioned, is cultural humility. As a volunteer, you may be asked to work with GBIB members who are different from you. We ask that all community members, including volunteers, practice cultural humility. What does that mean? It means we will never be sufficiently knowledgeable about cultures aside from our own. So the best way forward is to approach others with the goal of listening and understanding. It also means committing ourselves to approaching each person with an open and non-judgmental mind. And it means working to identify and resolve power imbalances, being careful not to impose what we think is right or best. Our next value is that all of our members, regardless of their age, health, mobility, or other circumstances, are able to meaningfully contribute. All of our members are valued for what they add to our community, whether that be a laugh, a story, a hug, or a more tangible volunteer service. We recognize that volunteer service is a mutually beneficial interaction. So here's a question for you. What benefits do you think you will receive from volunteering? If you're listening to the recording, just think about it and be ready to answer that question when you speak to somebody live. Claire, do you have any thoughts on what benefits you will receive?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking the connection to community, I feel like is a benefit. Yeah, for just feeling more connected to where I live. I think that's a benefit.
Yeah, and I definitely mirror that. One of my benefits is, and I work, right? I work in the village, but it's like I'm meeting my neighbors for the first time. I'm really interacting with them in ways I didn't before, and I absolutely love it. The last value I want to mention is around self-determination, which basically acknowledges that members are individuals with their own value systems and decision-making processes. While volunteers can provide additional support, we should appreciate that members are still independent people capable of making their own decisions. This also means that every person has the right to even make bad decisions. How about that? Sometimes these mistakes are some of the greatest opportunities for learning and growth. I know I've made bad decisions and I'm a more mature person because of them. There are limitations, however. We'll discuss that later, like if you think a member is putting their health and safety in jeopardy. But overall, while we as a volunteer might disagree with a member's decision, we have to understand that a member's decision is ultimately theirs to make. Finally, we must agree that another's beliefs and values should never be imposed on members. Any questions about the volunteer code of conduct?
No.
Okay, cool. So now let's talk about the steps to become a volunteer, what the volunteer opportunities look like, and how the volunteer service request process works.
Okay, so you are on your way to becoming a village volunteer. Here's a quick overview of the process to becoming a volunteer. These steps aren't exactly linear, but it usually begins with a neighbor expressing interest in becoming a village member or a village volunteer. And then they complete the membership application, selecting that they want to volunteer, or they complete the volunteer application. And then you're invited to this new volunteer orientation that you're watching now. And after you complete this orientation, or sometimes before, we just like to make sure we have a one-on-one conversation with everybody who becomes a member and everybody who becomes a volunteer. This just helps us understand. It's like a 20 to 30-minute phone call, and this just helps us understand why you want to be a volunteer, how you want to participate, and it helps us kind of set you up right for volunteering. And after that, we do run a criminal background check on all of our volunteers, and this is because we are trusting you and they are trusting you with letting you into their homes often for one-on-one volunteer services to, and so that's just why we do this criminal background check. And it's through Sterling Volunteers. Sterling Volunteers will send you an email, and it's really quick. You just basically are approving that we run the background check, which takes a couple days. And then after that, after those 3 steps, then you are a village volunteer or a strategic volunteer. So, there is a distinction. A lot of our members or neighbors are both, like a village volunteer, a strategic volunteer, or a member is just a member and it doesn't volunteer at all, and that's okay. But just to share the difference here, a village volunteer does things like assists members directly with small tasks and projects. For example, deliveries, pick up medicine from a pharmacy and drop it off at their house, help them by taking their hazardous waste to the transfer station. You could do a home service, such as changing a light bulb, moving furniture, hanging a picture on the wall, or helping organize a closet. Yard work is a popular one, especially in the fall when all the leaves are on the ground. So raking, shoveling, weeding, moving heavy objects in the yard. Technological support is a request you might get. That could be like connecting to Wi-Fi, or there's a printer jam, or help formatting a document, or learning about the cloud, or how to use Google Drive. We do have a group that meets monthly and is working with somebody in the neighborhood to help them with these kind of tech things. Friendly visits, or what we're calling care conversations now as well, is something that you might do, and it just helps to check in with members and see how they're doing and just start forming relationships. And then we want to start transportation pretty soon. So we're working on that too. And that would be volunteers providing rides to medical appointments or social events for our members who can't drive or don't have a car. Okay, and then there's also strategic volunteering. So typically, that looks like joining a committee or the board, which makes up our strategic volunteer team. And committees meet monthly, and then the board meets 4 times a year. Right now, we have a membership committee, a program committee, and a fundraising committee. And some of these things you see here fall underneath some of those committees. For example, like tabling at outreach events and care conversations are things that the membership committee does. Our program committee does organize and coordinate they meet monthly and they coordinate all the programs that we do each month. And we do about I guess around 10 programs a month, social, wellness, or educational. And then there's also the fundraising committee, which supports our individual fundraising goals and fundraising events. And then administrative. So we definitely could use some help from volunteers with administrative things, just like the background work and which is like website management and checking attendance in our database, stuff like that. But typically a strategic volunteer will start on a committee level before joining the board. So volunteers can decide which one of these is right for them, and we can definitely talk about it when we have our one-on-one phone call. All right, so once you become a village volunteer, how will you be asked to help a member? So here's the process we use. A member makes a request by calling or emailing. It's not super high tech. They just call or email us at the village, and we learn about what the member needs. Or another way that happens is through the care conversations that I was mentioning. Like our membership committee might call a member and check in with them, and they'll explain something that they could use help with, and they'll share that with us, and then we'll reach out to the member. Okay, so then once we know what a member needs, I will email all volunteers. We'll just blind copy and an email with the subject line volunteer request and a little description of the job that's needed. And no personal information about the member will be shared at that time. So if you can assist with that job, you simply reply back to the email if you're interested, and ask any questions if you have any questions. And then after we confirm that you're ready to go, we'll connect you directly with the member via email, and we'll also share the member's name and contact information. And so that then you two can coordinate directly together. We kind of step out of it at this point. And then we just ask that once you pick the time and date, and yeah, you just call the member about 24 hours before just to confirm your visit and remind them you're coming. And if you're late, once again, call the member so they don't worry. And then upon completion of the volunteer task, we ask both the volunteer and the member to submit a feedback form. It's really simple and short. We just want to know how the service went, if there's anything we should follow up on with the member, and if there's any red flags, which we'll talk about next. Okay. Identifying and navigating difficult situations. Okay, now we're going to talk about some potential challenges associated with volunteering, starting with identifying and navigating difficult scenarios. As we go through this section, I just want to say that like most of these scenarios are unlikely, and we are always a phone call away if you need anything, but this is something that we do think is really important to include in the training. So as a visitor to a member's home, a village volunteer may be the first person to notice a member's uncharacteristic behavior, unkempt appearance, or bizarre expressions. These changes may indicate serious underlying problems. You might think that agitation or frustration, for example, is just a part of getting older, but actually significant personality changes are not normal part of aging and could be indicative of a problem. So the following is a list of red flags you might encounter when volunteering. These are some of the changes in behavior that may indicate members are in need of additional help. And if so, just contact us if you observe any of the following: changes in mood, confusion or disorientation, alcohol or drug abuse, changes in physical health, neglect of personal hygiene, or concern of an unhygienic living situation. Now we're going to talk about two different scenarios that you will also almost likely never encounter while working with members, but on the off chance that you do, we want you to be prepared. Here are some guidelines for what to do if you're with a member and they have an accident. We want to make sure that we remain calm. If the member is unconscious or incapacitated, do not try to move them except in a hazardous situation, like if there's a fire. Call 911 immediately for assistance, and then you can call the village phone number to report the incident, and so that we can support you. Also, the second difficult scenario is if a member doesn't answer the door when they are expecting you. They might just be running late, but in this situation, remain calm and follow the following steps. Try calling the member on the phone number you were provided. Check the surrounding area. You can look in windows, you can try the door. but don't go inside. You can call the village for assistance and to report that the member wasn't home. But as a volunteer, it's not your responsibility to investigate any further. If you do see the member through the window, lying on the ground and not responsive to knocks, call 911 immediately. It's much better to be safe than sorry. False alarms are always preferred to the alternative. And then call us at GBIV as soon as possible. But remember, members like us may be facing challenges. I mean, anyone can be facing a challenge that would cause them to be late or not show. So try not to take it personally. Okay, and then a quick note about our insurance. In the unlikely event that you experience an accident related to volunteering, we want to make sure to share liability related information as it relates to volunteers. Volunteers are protected under the Good Samaritan laws, but these laws do not generally cover costs of legal fees. In order to make sure you are protected while volunteering, GBIV maintains a liability insurance policy that protects volunteers against civil claims made by members or third parties. There are limits to this coverage. The insurance will not cover the volunteer if they commit a crime, for example. Also, we do expect that volunteers rely on their own health insurance and car insurance. Since you're not employees of GBIV, Greater Brookland Village, you are not covered by workers' compensation insurance, so you must rely on your own health insurance if you are injured while volunteering with the village. And those who do volunteer to drive, once we get that program up and running, you must rely on your own car insurance policy to cover personal injuries or property damage, your own personal injuries. And if you, let's say, are doing a grocery shopping run for somebody and get in an accident, that would also be your car insurance coverage.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about suggestions for building healthy relationships. And this is referencing communication and boundary setting. So as you're volunteering, these apply to relationships with other people in our lives as well. Lots of these training tools were developed by licensed clinical social workers at Capitol Hill Village and also Iona. There are two main communication strategies we want to encourage volunteers to use with members. A volunteer is not a contractor. Every time we engage in a volunteer service with a member, building relationship is just as important as completing the task. The following communication strategies can be used at any village volunteering event, whether that be the obvious one of care conversations, where you're simply calling a member to talk and check in, or it be you changing a light bulb. The first is active listening. I'm sure most of us are familiar with this term, but a refresher never hurts. Active listening means use of verbal and nonverbal cues to show that you're listening. Verbal cues, yes. Nonverbal cues is leaning slightly toward the speaker, nodding your head, and giving eye contact. Ask open-ended questions. These give people permission to say more about what they're speaking about, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. So instead of saying, "Did things go well at your doctor's appointment?" the only answer you're going to get is a yes or no. You would say instead, "How did things go at the doctor's appointment?" Other examples, "What else can you tell me about? Can you tell me more about? What are some of the things you want to talk about today?" Paraphrase and reflect. Paraphrase and reflecting. So paraphrasing is when the listener repeats the person's statement in their own words to ensure that the message is understood. For example, if a member says, "I really don't want to get into a living situation where I'd be unable to make my own choices," the volunteer says, "So what I hear you're saying is that maintaining your independence is really important to you. Is that correct?" Refrain from jumping into advice-giving mode. I know this one is hard for me. We all want to be helpful, and we all think we have the answers. Clarify responses. This helps the listener understand the facts and the other person's feelings and attitudes. It may also help the speaker clarify and reflect on their own thoughts and patterns. For example, can you give me an example of what you're talking about? Or, is it possible that you feel, fill in the blank? These are probing questions to go deeper on a personal topic. I'm sorry, on a particular topic. Finally, summarize what was said. Clarify any responsibilities, actions, items that may have emerged, and determine when a follow-up conversation will happen. Let's do a little practice. Change the following questions from closed to open-ended. Here's a question. Did everything go well at your doctor's appointment? What would you say instead?
How was your doctor's appointment?
Yay! And how about, is your partner feeling okay?
How is your partner feeling?
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Encourage reminiscing. This is another strategy that's particularly helpful when working with older adults, and it's a way of reliving things that have happened in the past that are personally significant. It's often fun and even therapeutic, and can help the storyteller reinforce their sense of identity and maintain their self-esteem. Many people find that trips down memory lane gives them a sense of achievement or status. Others find that looking at both the positive and negative aspects of their lives in perspective allows them to build a bridge between past and present experiences. Questions you could start with are, how long have you lived in the neighborhood? What was your childhood like? What was your first job? What is the most exciting thing that has ever happened to you? Be curious about the member and see where the conversation takes you. Conversation is like walking down a hallway with many doors. Can you visualize that? Each room is an opportunity to explore a different part of someone's life. And it's an invitation for you to step in, get even more curious. So there's other ideas in the link here. I'm sure that will be sent to you after the session if you're interested. And now, how to create healthy boundaries. The last key suggestion we have is this, boundary creation. With members and volunteers are typically very caring people, but we want to make sure that you're never overburdened by your involvement with GBIF. Creating and maintaining healthy boundaries with the members is a key element of becoming a successful volunteer. A relationship without boundaries increases the risk that both parties eventually feel anxious, resentful, or frustrated. So, how do you set boundaries? Determine how much time you are open to offering. When talking to a member, use clear and simple communication. For example, you could say, "Hi, Kathy, this is Kinyofu. I'll be coming by at 10 today, but we must finish by 11:30 because I have another appointment." Be consistent. Also, don't be afraid to say no. Be candid about what you're there to do. Also, be prepared for a negative reaction when you make it clear about what your boundary is, and it gets crossed. You just want to respond with clear, respectful, and empathetic language, such as, "Kathy, I'm sorry that you're angry. This must be really frustrating for you. I do not mean to hurt you. We agreed that I would help you with your computer today, and that's all I can do. And we want you to consult the GBIF team if you aren't sure if a request falls within the boundaries of a healthy relationship." How do you know if you're crossing boundaries? Here are some signals. You lose objectivity, become resentful or easily hurt by a member's comments, or you become overly attached to a member. You feel annoyed about your visits or depressed after spending time with the member. You feel that you want to take over the member's responsibilities. You are not comfortable saying no to a member who asks you to volunteer without going through the GBIF office. Again, we want to make sure volunteers never feel guilty about something related to their involvement with GBIF. So at any point, if you're struggling to create or maintain healthy boundaries with a member, please do not hesitate to contact the office.
Okay, the final part of today's training is about how to support members with physical challenges. Here are some suggestions from Iona Senior Services for working with members with mobility, hearing, or visual challenges. Let's begin with mobility-related challenges. Always ask members to tell you exactly what to do to assist them. Once again, don't assume you know what would be best for them, but always ask them first. Ensure assistive devices like canes, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, etc. are within easy reach of a member. If there is an alternative to climbing up or down stairs, use it. Experts suggest that seniors with mobility difficulties use their stronger leg or side to lead them up their stairs and their weaker leg or side to lead them down the stairs. If a member uses a cane or a walker, ensure that members do not try to use a walker to pull themselves up, as this can lead to falls. Offer to carry items like handbags, coats, etc. that might make it harder for a member to use their walker or cane. If a member uses a wheelchair, ask the member about the features of the wheelchair as well as the member's comfort level using the wheelchair on their own. Many people don't need any assistance operating their wheelchair, but can direct you if they need help. If the member does not need you to push the wheelchair, don't insist. Remember to engage the wheelchair locks before a member gets in or out of the wheelchair anytime the chair is stationary. Never lean on a member's wheelchair as it is part of their personal space. If your conversation with members lasts more than a few minutes, consider sitting down or kneeling to get yourself on the same eye level. Okay, let's talk about supporting members with hearing impairments. Be sure that you have the hearing impaired individual's attention before speaking. Politely ask the individual if there's something you can do which will help them to hear or understand you better. Face the person you are speaking to and be on the same level. Keep your hands away from your face while speaking and use body language and hand gestures. Some individuals with hearing impairments will rely on your facial expressions, tone of voice, and simple lip reading to understand what you are saying. Speak slowly, clearly, and a little louder than you usually do. Allow the person sufficient time to process and respond to what you have said. Avoid chewing gum or speaking with your mouth full. Many people with hearing impairments will have an ear in which they can hear better. Try to direct your voice towards this ear. If there is a lot of background noise making it difficult for the senior to understand you, move to another location, or if possible, turn off the source of distracting sounds such as a television, a radio, or appliance. Don't assume a person can hear you just because they are wearing a hearing aid. While aids can make sounds louder, they do not necessarily make them clearer. Okay, and then the final physical challenge we'll discuss is vision-related challenges. Don't be afraid to ask a member with low vision or vision impairment how or what they are able to perceive and distinguish. The member is the first expert you should consult to guide you in understanding what aid they might require. Pay attention to the light sources in the area. Avoid standing between a light source and the member you are visiting. Make sure there is adequate lighting. The average 80-year-old person needs 3 times more light than a 29-year-old person does to see well enough to read. Always make your presence known and identify yourself and others around the visually impaired person. Politely inform the member when others enter the room or make meaningful hand gestures. Make sure the member knows when you are stepping away from the room or when you are leaving their company. Avoid the temptation to raise your voice. Being visually impaired does not mean you are hearing impaired as well. Speak directly to the member you are volunteering with in your normal manner. You don't have to admit words like see or look. It is understood that these words are part of normal conversations. When walking, be sure to describe when you are going, where you are going, and any changes in ground level, such as a step, or texture changes, such as movement from tile floor to a carpeted one. You can ask the member if they would like to hold your arm, but never pull or grab someone in order to guide them or to gain their attention. General rule is you don't hold someone else, you offer your arm for assistance. Okay, and a lot of this conversation has been directed towards members who are older members or who have a disability. But we just want to say that anyone can ask for help, and yeah, and you don't have you can be a younger person as well, and especially since we're an intergenerational village. But we hope that that training has helped you be more confident in supporting members with mobility and hearing and visual challenges. Okay, so yeah, like I was saying, we all need help sometimes. So do you have to be an older adult or have a disability to ask for volunteer help? Like I just said, no, you do not. We have two levels of membership: full and supporting, and full members. Anyone who's a full member can request volunteer support. You just have to be 18 or older. Anyone can ask for help. And some examples of something you might ask for help for are meals. Let's say you just had a surgery or you're a new parent. Help putting shelves on the wall. You just don't have the tools or the technical skills. I'm sure there's neighbors around that do and can help you, and we can help coordinate that through the village. Gardening is another example, or just simple motivation to get something done. Maybe you need a buddy to do it with. All right.
Yes, so here we go with the next steps. So we've gotten this far. Congratulations. You've completed the volunteer orientation. And so now, in order to become an active volunteer, you'll need to do a couple of things. Complete the volunteer screening interview, discuss volunteer placement and the types of volunteer that you're interested in doing. That conversation will be had with Nadia. Complete a background check, and this is if you are going to be going into members' homes. You will receive an email from Sterling Volunteers to give approval for GBIF to run a criminal background check. This will take you 1 minute to complete, and we'll have the results in 2 days. We're going to send you a volunteer manual via email that includes much of the same information from today's orientation, but with more detail, plus copies of the waivers you agreed upon you filling out your application. Finally, if you're not already, consider becoming a village member. Many of our volunteers are members too. As a member, you'll be regularly updated on village programs and events, member-only events, typically any program that is in another member's home, like gardening group or member salon. And you'll also be able to build relationships with other members through these shared experiences. This helps to build community and ultimately makes it easier to ask for help when needed. Our annual membership dues are pay what you can. Simply complete the membership application on our website. Your dues help to sustain our programs, staff, and more. With that, we thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now and then can answer any questions.